Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ripple Intent Podcast. I am Kyle Makrowski here with co-host John Grant. John, say hello.
Welcome, listeners.
Welcome indeed. We here at the Ripple Intent Podcast, we try to bring to the podcast what we do in our events. So we do breakfast clubs and we do an annual symposium. And in those events, we try to work with people to make them better people, better team members, and better leaders. And so continuing a conversation that we had not too long ago with our good friend Traci Duez, she joined us for a podcast where we were all over the place around a number of topics. We talked about so many different things, and she has graciously opted to come back and continue the conversation that we felt would continue. So here we are. Welcome back, Traci. Say hi.
Thanks, Kyle. Hey, John. Good to see you guys. See in this podcast, as you guys all say. See you later.
That's right. We'll see you later. We see you.
Yeah.
For all of our listeners, that's a great shirt you have on. Okay. All right. Moving on.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's
yes.
Right.
Well, thanks.
John did his hair for this episode. So yeah, it's wonderful.
Beautiful.
That's right.
That's
right.
So yeah, if you haven't listened to the first episode with Traci, I encourage you certainly to do that. There's no spoilers by any means, but I would to listen to them consecutively. But yeah, it was a really good conversation. We touched on the T.E.A.R model. We touched on you used me as a fantastic example of trying to just be intentional about my own thinking in something I have to do, which I was somewhat dreading, but the outcomes were so fantastic that emotionally and both visually, I lit up when you reframe the question as opposed to what do you have to do, as opposed to what will it help you achieve. The way I was expressing my own body language, all of that stuff was night and day different. And you showed that off in a way that was really cool. And I've actually, since our conversation, I've actually used that, not just on myself, but, a little trickery at work to get other people to, oh, you're dreading that, but what is it going to help us achieve? And they were like, oh, well, it's going to do this and this. And I was like, cool, let's focus on that while you do the tedious crap. And they were like, okay. And it actually kind of worked. And so thank you for that. That was awesome. And then we went into some other stuff. And so we'll just see where the conversation takes us today. But we were really excited to have you back and keep exploring the concepts that you provide to so many people and that you teach through your business and share in the journeys that you take others on. Your whole focus on helping people understand themselves, the way they think, the way they feel, and really what's the important stuff in life, as opposed to all that work minutia that gets in the way from time to time, has been such a encouraging thing that just happy to have you back.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm happy to be back. That's good, right?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
That's a good place to start. Yeah.
We hope you're happy to be back.
Yeah, we hope. Yeah. Yes.
You're as long as you're not in the that negative part of the T.E.A.R, right, where like this is the tedious piece, like, oh geez, I'm gonna do this one more time.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah. So you keep bringing up this T.E.A.R model, right? We might want to say it again, just since if the case they didn't listen last time, right? So we were talking.
Can see it behind you, so we're good.
Exactly. It is. Yeah, right behind me in the podcast. I love it. There's a little. Yeah, what do they call those big post-it boards or whatever? But yeah, so we all want results, and so a lot of people just take actions to get to results, and so that's the A and the R of T.E.A.R is actions to results, and that's where most of us focus. That's where some of the tedious stuff comes from. But in truth, whenever we try to get results and we're not getting the stuff that we want, it's because we're not taking the actions we need to take. And when I looked in my life and I thought, hey, why aren't I taking the actions? I realized I could boil it down to just a few words. I don't feel like it. And so those emotions or feelings get in the way of us taking the actions we know we could take in order to create the value, the results, the outcomes that we want. So then I thought, okay, well, what's causing me to feel that way? And it has to do with what you alluded to moments ago, Kyle. It's how I'm thinking about it, whatever it is, the actions I need to take, the results, the outcomes. So the T.E.A.R model is your thoughts produce your emotions, and then those emotions or energy that are produced lead to your actions or inaction, and then that leads to your results. And I think that's what you were talking about earlier, right? You were thinking about something of, oh crap, I have to do it. And that thought produced a crappy feeling, which led to, I don't know, maybe you giving 10% or 40% rather than 100% towards the outcome and results.
Let's be honest, it led to procrastination. That's really what it does.
Yeah.
It's not even half-assing it or 10% assing it. It was just don't do it.
Right. Yep. And so you don't get the results.
Yeah.
And all you had to do was change your thinking around it. It changed the level of energy you had, gave you enough energy to take the action to get to your results. What if you could do that all the time with the things that you are trying to achieve in your life?
And that real simple example that we used last time, and it was me talking about a task I have to do for the family. And when you said, well, describe what you have to do, and I explained it, and then it was kind of mundane, and I could feel the this is a lot of work. And then when you shifted the question and said, well, what are the results? And I explained the results, and you said, look at how you're lighting up about where this is going and where this will get you. And so, as opposed to thinking about all the different steps and the tediousness of making it happen, when you start with, if you start with thinking of the results, your emotional state, your physical state actually changes. Going, yeah, I'm excited. I like where this is going to go. I'm excited where it's going to go. I'm feeling good about what the outcome is going to be. And then I wade into the task. I start from a totally different perspective, and like you said, the energy goes up. And so that was the trickery I was talking about at work, where I was like, okay, so let me flip this around. Like, as opposed to, oh, I got to do all these things, it was hearing somebody saying that, I was like, yeah, but once you do all those things, what's going to happen? And they're like, well, now it is work. So they didn't get as excited as I did about the outcome. It was more like, all right, they're like halfway there, because again, it's work. It's like, well, these things will be better. Okay, cool. Well, I'll take what I can get. So I get a little bit of that, and it definitely reframe them in the moment. Now I would be curious to go back, because some of these things, I see some of these things are a few minutes of work. Some of them are hours of work, and in other cases, they are months of work. And so my question to you is, how, for those systemic or those long-term things, how do you apply this, especially when you get through, when you're in the meat of the hard work, the effort, the slog, for a better word, of just pounding through trying to get this stuff done? How do you keep that alive? Because it feels good for a few minutes, but history and our habits teach us that, okay, I got a little burst. That's nice. Now I really got to get down to it.
Yeah. I mean, great question. And so that's really what self-leadership is about. And I think leadership is about that. If your leaders don't remind you why you're doing this 4-year project time and time again, especially at the beginning when you're not seeing anything productive, visually or whatever being produced, yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to keep reminding people about what their dreams and experiences are going to be when this is accomplished, right? Just like your personal activity last time. It's not about the activity. It's about what does it lead to? And leadership, it should keep that in front of you, right? It keeps, where are we going? What are we doing? When it comes to self-leadership, well, now it's up to you to keep that in front of you. And so how can you use your best thinking? How can you create those habits? Because you're spot on there. How can you create those habits where that is something that you're looking at every day to remind yourself, hey, this is awesome. This is going to be awesome.
How do you do that? We talked about it a little bit last time, rewiring your brain thinking. How do you do that?
Well, how I do that is I help people measure their thinking using math, right? We talked about neuroaxiology, neuroscience blended with axiology, which is a mathematically based science of value. And so you can actually measure how you think. It's not about your personality. It's not about strengths or what any of those kinds of things that you're good at doing, behaviors, it's about thinking. It's about the very foundation of that T.E.A.R model we talked about. So, I mean, you can measure your activities, your behaviors with like discs or Myers-Briggs or stuff like that. You can measure some of your emotions with what gets you jazzed in terms of motivation and things like that. They're just, and they're very helpful. Just did it at the 3-day workshop we were at. The key to it all though is how you're thinking and where is your focus. So we teach people how to use one specific question. We call it the central question. And that central question is pretty simple. It has some steps to it. It's what choice can I make and action can I take in this moment to create the greatest net value or to make the biggest difference. So it's about all of those things, right? It's about a choice. What choice can I make? I don't have you ever been sitting at your desk, especially a lot of us that work from home or whatever, or even if you go into the office and you have so much to do, you can't figure out what to do next. I know having my own business, I do that quite a bit, because there's so many things I could be doing. But as soon as you ask your brain a question, what choice can I make and action can I take in this moment? Because that's what I have, to create the greatest net value or to make the biggest difference. All of a sudden you've asked your brain a question and it's like, oh, well, I could do this. And so you can get out of park and get into drive, get out of neutral and start moving.
So what I'm hearing you describe is prioritizing.
It can be, yeah. Right? But you can't
It
always
can be.
prioritize the most important thing right now in this moment. Some of the tasks that you have require other things. So if you need to be in a group to make a decision and you're not in a group right now, that may be the most important thing you could do, the most valuable thing you could do right now. But you can't because you're not in the proper context to do it. I mean, if you're going to listen to like an ethics webinar, but you also have another call scheduled at the same time, right? You could. Okay, you guys, I'm laughing because of what we talked about
What
pre-recording here,
It's a
right?
great,
analogy.
Yeah,
great hypothetical example. Keep going.
right, right.
It
So
wasn't ethics.
it was.
It wasn't. I
I
made
know.
up.
I'm just teasing, I know. So so you have these choices that you can make, right? And so sometimes we make both, and we half-ass it, as we talked about before, as you mentioned. But which one was gonna create the greatest value in that moment? Contextually, maybe there's a recording of that web event that you could go get later. I don't know. Um, but the people were in front of you in this virtual call. So they were probably that thing was probably not assuming more important than some class or other web event. I don't know. Maybe you need that web event to be able to relate to these people better. Yeah, maybe more important. But we don't take the time to make those choices because we go by this task list, right? And we're just like, oh, look at all these things I have to get done. And sometimes the thing that gets done is the thing that you like to do, which isn't the thing that may be creating the greatest value. And when I say net value, it doesn't mean just for you. It means for you and for others. It means long-term and short-term.
Okay, there's a lot there. Let's back up for a second. So if I heard you correctly, I'm gonna kind of pull this apart piece by piece. So when you
Cool.
start talking about the behaviors and the emotions, you're saying those are driven by it starts with the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you've conditioned yourself to think will actually drive your emotional reactions as well as your behaviors, as opposed to what some of the assessments say, these are what you're good at, and that's what actually drives your thinking and your behavior. So for example, if so I have the achieving strength, and what that means is I do make those lists and I have a lot of tasks to do and I like checking them off and I like getting them done, and occasionally I'll get something done and I will write it down on my list and then cross it off just for the satisfaction of getting something done and seeing it written down with a line through it. I have those post-its on my desk almost daily. It's fantastic. um, so on one hand, some would say that that is my natural wiring. What you're saying is that that is actually a result of the way that you've been conditioned to think, or the way
Absolutely.
that you have habitually developed to think.
Yes. You probably did not come out of the womb with a checklist. Oh,
I
well,
don't
maybe you
know.
did.
My
You
mom
wanted to
might
breathe, you
argue
wanted to
that one.
eat, you wanted to, yeah. Right. No, but
We
you
got things to
don't.
do. Let's go. Here we go.
It's we develop those. We see we look around us as we're growing in our formative years, as they say, and we decide we look at things and we're like, oh, that's success, or and then we attribute whatever that is that got people to that success that we see, and then we start to formulate our own ways of behaving around that. So, not that you can't
Yeah.
be another way. You can. Like, my mom is super altruistic. She will help you whether you need it or not, right? And as I was growing up, I saw my mom always helping all these people, and not that she wasn't there for me. I have great parents. But I was like, "Wait a minute. That isn't a good characteristic. I'm not all that altruistic." Now, that doesn't mean I don't help people or do things. I just do it for a different reason. I help people. I do Special Olympics. I do umpire Little League Baseball, like the whole bunch, give money away to St. Jude, like all those things, because it makes me feel better about me.
Well,
And
wait. You
yeah,
umpire Little League Baseball. You umpire the World Series of Little League Baseball. Let's just get that humble pitch out there. Okay.
well, thank you.
Which is,
Um,
it's
yeah,
awesome. And yeah, it does. So I don't want to, when you're rattling off that list, you're downplaying what others see.
no, what I'm
And so
trying to say,
that's,
Kyle,
yeah.
is that you will make assumptions. People will make assumptions that I do that because I'm altruistic. They will assume my motivation is that I volunteered for 20 years to umpire. I have volunteered as Special Olympics coach and play unified. They assume I'm altruistic, and I'm not. And I'm not even putting myself down or even being humble. I'm just saying that's not my motivation for doing it. I do it because I want to feel good about me. Because for a large part of my life, I didn't feel good about me. And so as I look at those things, and so we assume, make a lot of assumptions about what other people are thinking or feeling. Those are below the surface of the water, right? We take their actions and look at the results. And so we can look at you and we say, oh, that Kyle, he's very task driven. I mean, that's all he is. He's all about extrinsic things. He doesn't have any heart. He just has to get shit done. And then that's it. But no.
You wouldn't be wrong. Sorry,
Yeah,
was I
yeah,
on mute?
yeah. That's that's not the case, right? As you can hear by any of the events, any of the ripple intent events you go to. A- And yet people can, like I said, people can make those assumptions. And so it comes down to what you're thinking about as well, not just what you do, not just the actions and behaviors you have.
So the motivation, go ahead, John. You're dying to get in here.
No, I'm loving this where the conversation's going, and I Traci, I love the approach to it too, right? Because I can hear you, Kyle. I'm working my way around this too. You know, there's the how I'm naturally wired, right? I have my natural strengths, my natural tendencies, and how I'm processing the level of effort that is required to adjust my mindset to to consider the different level of motivation, right? So if I were, right, again, I've got a billion things on my list as well, and so I can see where you're saying, Traci, multiple levels. On the one hand, I can reevaluate, I can reprioritize each of the items based on my assumption of net value to everyone that it impacts. Um, but I can also take a look at that list, and I guess as part of that net value, maybe correct me if I'm misstating this. If my assumption of the net value is me changing my perception of what the result is of completing the task, which can help me adjust my motivation and my desire to complete the task.
Yeah. And it's going
So
to
a
be
lot of things I have on my list are not at all interesting to get done. They have to get done. Right?
right.
I don't feel like, oh, this is going to give me a warm fuzzy to, complete this report.
Right.
Right.
So it's
But,
interesting, that
yeah, go ahead,
approach. Yeah.
please.
So what was your but though? But what? You have that list and you have that priority. You have that, you have to do's.
Well, yeah, if I start thinking about, okay, I have, back in the work world, right? I have to complete a report or whatever. We're doing a bunch of calculations for X, Y, or Z. But if I kind of change that perspective to understand, what is the end result going to be of the thing I'm completing, right? Is that helping other people, right? What does that report actually mean in the end? How does it help the next person I'm delivering it to change their world, right? Or is
Right.
my contribution to it actually impactful to the people who are working on it with me? It's really
Or is
interesting to
your,
think about
well,
changing the
or is
value.
is the completion of it valuable to you? See, that we assume that it's not, because we tend to just see ourselves as human doings rather than human beings. And so as we're doing something, is it helping you become the person that you want to be? Many people don't even know who they aspire to be. I ask people, who do you aspire to be? And they're like, the best me I can be. Right? Okay.
That's a T-shirt right there. Yep.
Exactly. Exactly.
Be
Listen,
all you can be.
right. I just want to be
Yeah.
the best me I can be. Okay. Who is that? Who do you aspire to be and become? And then anything that you do in your life should help you be or become that person. And so if your job isn't doing that,
That's
get another job.
it's too hard. That's too hard of a question. I'm just gonna go back to my task list.
Right. So you talk about hardwiring. I don't believe in hardwiring. We can re-hardwire our brain at any time. There's this process called synaptic pruning. If you stop using a neural pathway, it will prune itself and you can create other ones. So for me, an extreme introvert growing up most of my life, this is not a fun thing. Would not have been a fun thing for me to do. It's now what I do for a living. I speak in front of people all the time, and strangers even. And my mom told me not to do that. Do not talk to strangers, right? And so here I am talking to you, and who can be stranger? Those are the things that you can rewire your brain. What were your strengths? Don't have to be your strengths if you don't want them, if they're not supporting who you aspire to be anymore. So if I want to be,
That's
I have my
oh
list of
man.
things in front of me, right? I want to be inspiring. I want to be present. I want to be ambitious. I want to be generous. I want to be daring. I want to be passionate. So does being an introvert help me be inspiring? No. But if I aspire to be inspiring, then I've got to rewire some things. I got to use my best thinking and think about, who do I aspire to be? And does how I'm feeling, thinking, or acting right now support it? If the answer is no, which it usually is if I'm asking myself that question, then I figure out what is. So when it comes to adding the greatest net value, it has to do with value to me as well. So if you want to be more persistent at getting your tasks done, well, you're going to do the boring, mundane ones just as well as just as much as you're going to do the other ones. Because, hey, you desire to be a persistent human being.
But this is a massive quantum leap from the okay, the changing your thinking about your day-to-day tasks and trying to figure out which ones create the most value. Now you're challenging and saying, if you're going to make that decision to determine which ones provide the most net value, you have to be able to answer that question of, who do you aspire to be? If you don't know where you're going, or at least what you're aspiring to achieve or accomplish or become, then you have no context besides external factors to determine which tasks are going to get you, or which things, or which exercises, or whatever that's going to be constantly externally focused, which results in, I'm glad it's Friday, I just had to get through the week. Boom. Now I have Saturday and Sunday to not do those things, rinse and repeat, which means, well, why don't I enjoy my job? Well, if you're not going anywhere. Now, when I'm going through my head is, and I remember having this guy because he worked for me for a long time. He was like, okay, so if we do all the self-development stuff, he actually heard you back in the day. And when you came to our event in Portland, he heard you. And months later, he comes to me and he says, I hear all this stuff and I see what you're trying to do and you're trying to build us and grow relationships and all that stuff. But we have this senior vice president who's a total jackass and yells and screams and treats everyone so poorly. And he's one of my biggest internal clients that what I see is he makes a hell of a lot more money than you do. And I want to make a hell of a lot more money. So why would I do any of this stuff? Why don't I just do what he's doing? Because clearly that's how you get to be successful. And I was like, wow, that's a fantastic question. Is that who? Now, this guy, he didn't want to have a family. I go, is that who you want your kids to look at? And that got his attention because he was searching almost desperately for tell me who I'm supposed to aspire to be.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me who I am, because he hadn't gone through that. So he was just grabbing it. It's like the people, oh, I want to be Elon Musk, or I want to be Barack Obama, or I want to be fill in the blank. I want to be this celebrity, that celebrity. Okay, that might be a component to help you answer that question, but that's almost like hitting the easy button of I just want to be them. You don't even know who they are, but you want what they have. Those are two
Right.
very, very different things. And so the quantum leap I'm talking about is if you're going to put effort into how you're thinking and use the context of trying to decide where you're going to put your effort, energy, and attitude each and every day to produce the best net value for yourself and then those around you, you have to be able to answer a question of who do you aspire to be? What are you trying to get to, or what are you trying to achieve
But
personally
it's not only yeah,
before
and it's
you
not
can,
only about achieve, right?
yeah,
Because sometimes we say achieve, Kyle, right?
right,
We're going back to your task
yeah,
list, right?
no,
It's how
wrong
do
word,
you
wrong
want
word.
to yeah, but how do you wanna show up in the world, right? So, the guy who was making a heck of a lot more money, he obviously wanted to show up as a jackass. No, he obviously didn't think about it. 'Cause not a lot of people do.
Exactly.
They
Yes.
just do the task, they
Yes.
gotta get shit done, and so they just use people to get whatever's done, and because that's what they've been taught is important in their life, and that's what they saw as being successful and how they saw getting there. Now, at the end of the day, my job, my goal in life is to help everybody finish each day feeling fulfilled. And the only way you can do that is when the work that you do aligns with who you want to be and how you want to show up in the world. So if you're doing a job that doesn't allow you to show up in a way that you want to show up, then get another job. Don't do it. And people say, "Oh, well, it's easy for you to say you're doing something you love." Yeah, do you know why I have this job? Do you know why I started my own company? Because I worked for a jackass. And I didn't wanna do it that position and that work was not helping me become who I wanted to be, so I quit. I didn't have another job. I just created one.
Did you know at the time who you wanted to be, or did you just feel that the alignment was so off that it was like the better thing to do is get out of this environment as opposed to because I see a lot of people withholding making this decision based on it's not clear yet who they want to be. Do you have to
I
have that?
I think sometimes you're clear on who you don't wanna be. Like, if you look at the attributes that you aspire to okay, if you look at what you aspire to do, w what attributes do you need to be more, and which do you need to be less? So for me, I needed to be less frustrated, less discouraged, less whatever. And I knew that right away. This guy that I was working for made me feel less than. And so, okay, so what do I need to be more of? I need to be more courageous. I need to be more inspiring. I need to be more ambitious. I need to be more daring. Whatever those words happen to be. And so then I focused on okay, how can I practice being more of those things? If I'm at my job 10 hours a day, I can't practice there because I'm feeling I don't wanna do it for that person. And so what are the next things that you can do? Right? How can you do to be? Because they're not totally two separate things. You do things to become things. I umpired Little League Baseball to become more courageous, to become more decisive, to become more self-forgiving. Because I don't know if you know this, umpires make mistakes sometimes. And so I learned I had to forgive myself whenever I screwed something up. And I had to do it really fast because 20 seconds later, another pitch is coming. And if I'm still back there where I messed up, I'm going to miss this next one too. So, what are those things that you can do and that you're doing to help you be who you want to be? When you link those two together, that's where fulfillment comes from.
Yeah, and it's the for so many people, the first step. I mean, Gallup Gallup talks about 7 out of 10 people are either along for the ride or just totally not engaged in their work. 7 out of 10, and
Yep.
this is 50 years of data, regardless of the context of the economy, of the country, of all that stuff. There's 50 years of data. As a country, we have 7 out of 10 people along for the ride or not even caring. And
Yep.
what I'm trying to get, and I see this more and more and more, the people that Jon and I have the pleasure of interacting with, like yourself, are not in that 7 to 10 category. And most of the people in the teams that we work on and the work that we do, we're not. And so that means that there's 70 or for every 3 people that we're talking to, there's 7 more out there who have no idea where to start. And they're lost in that either they've given up or this is like my parents used to say, it's work. It's supposed to suck. That was the context I had. So yeah, when I
Mhm.
came out of the when I came out of the womb, right away it was, well, get ready to go to work because it's gonna suck. And I
Yeah.
heard that for a long time, and then I was followed up with well, it's not the work that's so bad; it's the people that I have to work with. It's part of
Mhm.
the reason my dad went to nights is to be around less people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was what I was taught and this was encouraged. And so I'm trying to figure out is and what I'm hearing, and I think it's so encouraging to get to people, is you don't have to have the answers to this. It could be as simple as just look around and figure out what you want to do less of. And it's not the
Mhm.
task, not the achievement. It's what do you aspire to be less of? Like you're describing, I want to be less frustrated. Okay, put that down. That might be the start of your list. And that's okay. You might not know I want to be this or that or this right
Yeah.
now, but you know what you want to do less of. And that's an
Yeah.
okay starting point.
Yeah. And that be
It's where
more
you
and be
started.
less
I think it's
is
where a
where
lot of
we
us started.
absolutely. And that's where we can start, right? And that's really um the assessment we talked about last time, what that does. I mean, we were going to break down John's assessment here since he took it. But those are the kind of things, and it's you see it in a lot of assessments, and I saw it when I looked at John's. Right, you have these really high expectations about how everything should go in your life, the surroundings, circumstances, all of that kind of thing, and then when you or life doesn't measure up to it, you tend to think that there's something missing or something wrong with you. And that's not necessarily the case. It's your expectation that might be out of whack and that's causing you to think in different ways and think, oh, I'm stuck here. I have to do this. I should. I must. I need to. And every time you say those things, it's a lie. Everything you do in your life, you do because either you want to, you get to, or you choose to. Now, the choice may be between two sucky things, but you're still a choice. And so you're getting
That's
to choose these things. You're not a victim of them.
That's if there's anything talk about reframing the mindset, that is so powerful right there. It's we all nobody wants to be the victim, but so many people are comfortable or have grown comfortable and are at the point where they don't even realize that engagement thing I was talking about, the 7 out of 10 people, half of them would categorize them as, hey, it's the cards I've been dealt, or it's my crappy boss, or whatever it is all these excuses. They are actually professing that victim mentality, and most of them wouldn't categorize themselves as victims, but that's
Sure.
actually what they're doing, not even realizing it.
Yeah. And so when you can figure out, when you learn what your best thinking is, not just your best behaviors, when you learn where your best thinking is, what we do is we teach you to ask yourself questions that pull you into your best thinking perspectives. And when you ask yourself these things, which we call centering questions, you recenter your brain into a perspective that can see very clearly and get yourself out of one where you can't. So when you're so over focused on an expectation or an idea, and you tend to think that your idea is more valuable than reality because you're basically saying reality is wrong. No, reality is. There's no right or wrong with it. Right? Reality is. And even if it doesn't match your expectations, that's still what you want to deal with. That's not what our brain says, though. Our brain says, I shouldn't have to do this. I'm stuck here. This is stupid. And it makes up all these stories. And when you understand the stories that your brain is making up, which is what we measure how you think, and we measure the stories that your brain makes up. That's when you can start to rewrite your stories. And I rewrote my story. I don't have to hide anymore because I'm gay, or I don't have to hide anymore because I'm short and like to play basketball. I don't like we have stories in our heads about why we have to hide or why we have to change. And you don't have to when you can shift into your best thinking and bring that to the world. Shifting to your best thinking when you don't know what it is, that's hard. We have two choices, one sitting on each shoulder. Which one are we going to listen to? I don't know. But when you know which one to listen to, you turn to that one and you're like, okay, yeah, that's how I can make my best choices. That's how I can bring my best self, how I can show up the way I want to show up.
I know you got to go. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know, man. Jon, the last time we talked with Traci, I walked out of here with so many things rattling around in my head and so much more just optimism and energy. I'm serious. It's just like I'm going to smile the rest of the day, and I got to go sit through some really tedious stuff, but I'm going to be smiling. I can tell you that. So thank you for being here again. I really appreciate it. And Jon.
No, Traci, you're making. I love this. Right, I'm feeling I have some agency, and that's always helpful. So, thanks for help us adjust our mindsets and change our perspectives. So, love having these conversations with you.
My pleasure.
Find Traci on LinkedIn. Find us on LinkedIn. Find rippleintent.org, all that fun stuff. We're on all the webs, all the internets, and all the Insta Facebooks. You need to find us. We will see you next time on the podcast. Take care, everybody.